Esta es la serie internacional de Tiempo de Mercadeo. La semana pasada hablábamos con Noel Capon sobre lo que ha sido la evolución del marketing en el mundo. En esta oportunidad vamos a continuar con él, hablando sobre las estructuras mercadológicas. Esto lo haremos dentro de unos segundos. Ya regresamos. Hey Noel, welcome back to my program.
Delighted to be here again.
Thank you. We were talking last week about segmentation, and we were talking about the difficulties nowadays because of many things that have to be taken into account when segmenting a market.
Right.
What else can we say about it?
Just, I think that it's absolutely critical that you do a good job of segmentation, that the techniques of segmentation are evolving. And one of the things that's changed over recent years is the amount of data that's available. People talk about this notion.
But there is one question about segmentation, because one thing is segmenting before going into business,
right,
and a different thing is segmenting now or resegmenting now with all the changes that we have seen.
Well, I think that segmentation is a job that's never finished. That you remember that there are two issues here. One is the segmentation process and getting segments, and then there's the matter of which ones to choose. So there are two things going on. First of all, even if the segmentation didn't change, you may decide to change with respect to which segments you target.
Absolutely.
That's one issue. But the segmentation itself is changing as people's lifestyles change, their incomes change, and on and on. And segment sizes change. So, for example, in the recession of 2008 and 9, people in general around the world had far less money, and so for a period certainly there were more people who were looking for, let's call it value products, let's call it a low price segment than there were before, and so that's just one change that hopefully we'll get out of.
Let me mention an example that I just saw in your new book, Tylenol from Johnson and Johnson. You know, when Tylenol started, there was only one Tylenol. Do you remember?
That's right.
And then the problem back in last century with those tablets, or that they became poisoned and killed a lot of people. Now, how many Tylenols do we find in a drugstore, in a normal drugstore? 18. So that means segmentation is done at its job, because Johnson & Johnson is now offering 18 types of Tylenol.
Right.
You have the same pain.
That's absolutely right. That and the issue for the company, the leading company, is that if you do not address the various segments that are there, someone else will come in and do it. So that when Tylenol has some overall product, as it had way back, and there are these issues of children, someone comes up with something for children. If Tylenol had not done that, they would have lost that position. Very important. Now, there are many examples of where leading companies lose position because they don't go after new segments. So it's an old example. It's very important. U.S. automobile companies used to dominate the U.S. automobile market, but there was a segment of people at the, let's call it the bottom end, who wanted a cheap car. Detroit did not think they could make enough money off small cars and didn't offer them. So in came first of all Volkswagen, and then the Japanese, and then the Japanese moved up market, right up to ultimately to the Lexus and the Infiniti, and now Toyota is arguably the leading car company, all because of a segmentation decision that GM made back 40 years ago of not developing a car, although they actually had cars because they had the cars in Europe. They could have brought them up, but they didn't think they would make enough money off of them.
Isn't that a high risk of line extension?
Well, of course it's a line extension, and this is what makes for an interesting life and difficult decisions for managers. You want to only have a line that's long enough to address segments, but if you gets too long, then diseconomies build in. So the product line's got to be, quote, the right length. No one knows what that is. So that's something you've always got to keep on top of. And I often say to my students that being a marketing manager is like being a person that goes to Las Vegas or to Monte Carlo. You're making bets. You're making bets. Now, in Las Vegas, you're betting against the house, and the odds are pretty clear. In marketing,
what are the odds?
Well, they're less than 50% typically. But in marketing, what we try to do is get information and data to push the odds in our favor. So you're absolutely right. The broad issue of balance is an absolutely critical one.
Let's go to the third imperative.
Okay, the third imperative is about strategy, and here there are a number of pieces. One piece would be the whole branding issues of branding strategies. There are a set of issues of what I call life cycle strategies. Of when you enter a market, you're going to be doing different things than you will when the market is more mature. But the real issue is one I call positioning, and there are four key decisions that the company has to make. First of all, who are the customer targets? Who are you going to place your communication efforts on? Notice when we talked about last week, we talked about the segmentation issue in automobile rental. If I'm addressing the business person segment, the customer target is probably the secretary. If I'm addressing the leisure segment, it may well be the husband or it may well be the wife. So who are you going for? Who are you going up against? The competitive target. And then what we term the value proposition. Why should that customer target buy from you or recommend you rather than the other guys? And the fourth one is the reason to believe. Why should the customer target believe that you can actually deliver on the value proposition? So those are the four key elements of positioning, which is really the heart of the strategy.
In working about marketing plans, so many people are confusing tactics and strategies. Right. What could be the difference between a tactic and strategy?
Okay. This is where we make the difference between what I call imperative 3 and imperative 4.
Oh, so, okay.
So let's transition then. Imperative 3, these are the strategic issues. Imperative 4 has to do with the market offer we put together. And there, many of your viewers will understand this notion of the marketing mix. It's the product decisions, the promotional decisions, the distribution decisions, the pricing decisions, and so forth. They are really tactics in the sense of the overall market strategy, but they support the value proposition. It's through those different tactical elements, if you like, that you're actually supporting the strategic direction of the firm.
Okay, we're going to go to another commercial break and we'll be right back.
Okay.
Vamos a un corte de comerciales y ya estamos de nuevo con ustedes. Okay, back to strategies and tactics. So tactics, the fourth imperative, right? What's the fifth?
The fifth imperative is to secure the support of other functions. And here the metaphor I like to use is...
But before we go on, I would like to ask you, which do you think is the most important P of today? Promotion, which I mean is communications instead of... I'd rather use communications because when you say promotion, so many people get,
confused. You're right, you're absolutely right. Yeah.
Which one do you think is the most important now?
I think it depends on...
Because the discussion is if it is price, because so many people are saying that people are buying from price instead of value or whatever.
No, I don't think you can say that anyone is more important than the other in a general sense. You put them together as an offer. And often people say, well, we have a really pricing problem, for example, therefore price is more important. But when people say they have a pricing problem, they probably have a value problem. It means they're not delivering enough value in their product or in the distribution.
Or a service to customer problem.
Oh, that's right, could well be. And so the issue is what makes life difficult and interesting is that offer you put together has got to be better than the offer the other guys are putting together. And sometimes you'll win by having a better product. Other times you win by having better distribution. Other times you win by having a better price. The iPad, quote, wins because, let's argue, because it has a better product. Certainly doesn't have a better price. It's a very, very expensive piece of electronics.
John Maxwell wrote a book, and he said that marketing is depending 70% on communications. What do you think about
No,
I
think
think communicates.
No, well, that's right. And so you certainly look at the Mac, look at the iPad, and there's some communication
If you look at the package, if you look at the way, the brand, the color, the size, the price, like he says, everything communicates, but don't connect.
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree with that, 'cause everything I think then comes together in what the brand is. So that's sort of getting back to the brand. And certainly one of the things Steve Jobs was focused on was the design and the way the package looked and the way all the products looked. And so they were therefore communicating something about those products and about Apple. So I wouldn't disagree with everything communicates. I don't think that makes communication
the most important,
most important element.
Okay, then back to the fifth imperative, which you were saying.
So that's the issue of securing the support of other functions. Because effectively, I like to use the metaphor of an architect or builder. If you hire a builder to build a house, the builder will build a house. But it may not be that great a house. So you need an architect to design the house and then have the builder build it. And I think that's the marketing, in a sense, is the architect. So marketing doesn't actually produce a lot of value.
Yes.
It's the other parts of the organization produce the value. So marketing has, although we think of marketing as a major external role in figuring out what's going on with customers, competitors, it also has a critical internal role.
Very important.
And very absolutely critical in bringing together all the parts of the organization behind what marketing thinks should be is the way to address the market. If the organization says, marketing says, hey, look, this is what we need for customers, and the organization says we can't do it, marketing's job is to be an evangelist, to work at that, to make sure. That's sort of one piece of it. The other piece of it is to make sure everything's done appropriately and at the right time. There are also timing issues here, for example.
It's a big issue.
Big issue. Yeah, you don't want your advertising in June if the product doesn't appear on the shelves until August.
When you were talking about the life cycle, those periods are becoming every day they are shorter and shorter and shorter.
Going back to life cycle, that's critical. If you go back, let's say 15, 20 years ago, and you entered a new market, you could screw up,
yes,
and regroup and come back,
recover from that. Yeah.
Recover from that. That's much less possible these days because things are moving much faster. It's partly the internet. It's partly new methods of transportation and package delivery services and so forth. So a lot of pieces there. But you're absolutely right. Shortening, no question.
Okay, before we go to the sixth imperative, we're going to go to another commercial break, and we'll be right back.
Great.
Vamos entonces a una tanda de comerciales y ya estamos de nuevo con ustedes para el sexto imperativo. Ya volvemos. Let's go to the sixth imperative.
Okay, well, the sixth imperative is what I call monitor and control. And there are sort of two pieces to this. First of all, in the marketing plan, the firm will lay out what it is they're going to do. So one part of the control system is, did you actually do what you said you would do? That's one part. The second part is you will have, in the marketing plan, have laid out certain benchmarks for sales and profits and so forth. Are you reaching those sales and profits targets? If you are, then fine, you keep on trucking. If you're not, you want to know early enough you can start making course corrections. And the term I like to use is steering control, where you monitor on a continual basis how you're doing against what you plan to do. Now, if you go back a few years, it used to take many companies a long time, often months, before they were able to match the results with what actually happened. Nowadays, that period is shortening so that companies can, in fact, react much more faster. So that's the sixth of the six imperatives.
Yeah, what you have done is just about the same as describing a marketing plan, how to write down a marketing plan.
That's absolutely right. Those are the areas you've got to focus on.
Okay, and now there is a question, because you just wrote the book and you are presenting a kind of a structure, a marketing structure. How do you think a customer can become loyal to a company or to a brand or to whoever?
Okay, I think that by continuing to deliver value, right the way through for every part of what the company does, it has to be concerned about the way the customer thinks about it. Because one of the things that happens.
Do you really think a customer can become really loyal?
Absolutely, yeah. There is another issue that goes on, and that's sometimes customers seek variety. But on the other hand, the company can deal with that issue by having multiple brands. But yeah, I think there are certainly many companies, for instance, let's take Amazon, for example. Of customers swear by Amazon. They just continually buy things because Amazon focuses very heavily on, puts customers at the center of everything it does, which goes back to the notion of this market orientation, where it's not just a marketing department issue, it's everybody's goal.
And besides, when somebody goes to buy a book from Barnes and Noble, that doesn't mean that it's unloyal to Amazon, does it?
So absolutely not. So when I talk about loyalty, I don't mean that 100% of your purchases will be there.
Yeah, it's not the same as marriage, you know.
That's right.
You'll be unloyal in your marriage with your.
Well, that's a bit of a different. That's a different issue. We could go there if you want, but maybe that's another program.
Yeah, unloyalty doesn't mean that you can't go to some other store to buy from it.
No. The bookstore one is very interesting because the book one. So Amazon is now very effective at delivering those books to you. But if, for example, I want to go out with my wife for an evening, I might well decide to go to a Barnes & Noble store because we enjoy looking through the shelves. Mm-hmm. And furthermore, there's a Starbucks coffee in the cup of coffee. Yeah. And if by the way I had children, maybe on a Saturday morning, there's a clown, they're reading books to the children. So there's a different set of values that Barnes & Noble is offering in their stores to the ones that Amazon
you can't get from Amazon.
You can't get from Amazon. And maybe at some points in time, I prefer that set of values than the other set of values. Yeah, absolutely right.
So loyalty is becoming an issue now because of the competition that we have in the market, and you think it is possible, which is, I agree. And we have to take into account that to maintain that loyalty is a matter of marketing because it has to be maintained.
It has to be maintained. And one of the things we talk about these days is not so much what we sell to the customer this year, but something called lifetime customer value, where as we think about the company and think about its markets, we think about the revenues and profits we make from that customer today, plus next year, plus the year after. When you think in those terms, you start thinking, well, what should I do as a company to invest in those customers to keep them coming back to me?
Kind of experiential marketing, like your colleague Bernd Smith says.
Right, absolutely. To make sure that customer experience continues to be. But here's the problem for senior managers and CEOs. If I come along to my top management and say, I want to put an investment in a factory or in a piece of plant and equipment, in general, if I've got a good argument, in general, top management goes along with that because they can see what they got. They can see this factory or they can see the piece of equipment. If I say I want to invest in customer experience, they can't ever see that. You can't see the customer experience. You can't kick it. So top management often has more difficulty investing in that sort of soft customer area than they do in hard assets. But if at the end of the day you've got to get customers, and that's what lets the company survive and grow and create shareholder value, you've got to be able to do that.
Two more questions before we end the program. what do you think about the future of advertising? Because that's becoming some people say that probably advertising is in jeopardy now.
I think that's probably true as regards traditional advertising. I mean, here's an interesting, I may have this, not have the statistics quite right, but if you go back a number of years ago in the United States, if you wanted to reach, say, 70% of American families, you needed to be on just 3 channels, the major channels. Today, if you want to reach 70%, you've probably got to be in 50 channels.
You need a miracle.
Yeah. So it's a different problem. The other thing, so you have a creative issue. The other issue in advertising that's become very important is in advertising you have the creatives and you have the media planners. Media planning has become much more important because if it's 50 channels or whatever the number is, that means that's a much more complicated job than it was a number of years ago. So I think that's one of the major changes that's happening in advertising. And then you throw the web in, which is not quite a traditional channel. So it gets very, very complicated.
The other question is, what do you think about what they are doing with prices? I mean, discounting everything, a lot of promotions, sales promotions. What do you think about that?
What I think is that competition is getting very tougher, and that's one way by definition. If you've got some set of value and now it's at a lower price, the overall value of the customer is greater. In general, I would advocate that you think about value. Firms should think
more than anything else.
More than anything else. At the end of the day, you may have to cut price. But if you cut price early on, then you do not have the profits in order to reinvest.
Yeah, if you keep cutting price, that's a mistake.
I think so. I mean, at the end of the day, you may have to cut price, but I think you've got to put the major effort on what value can I offer customers. And it could be in lots of different areas, as we discussed. Could be better product, could be better service, could be better delivery, and so forth. Certainly, people are paying a lot of money for lots of products because the value is there. And that's the way I would like to think the companies, in fact, sort of spend their time thinking about.
Okay, to close the program, to end the program, one advice to Colombian marketers.
Know your customers, know your competitors, and deliver better value to your customers than your competitors deliver.
With one condition. Value is not an everlasting thing. I mean, it has to be adjusted.
And that's continue to do that, and that's got to change over time.
Okay, well, Noel, bad, too sad, time is up. But I thank you very much because I know that your opinions and what you have said is going to be of great help to all the Colombian marketers. And for that, I thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Bueno, se nos acabó el tiempo. Lástima porque con Noel Capon podemos estar mucho rato. Para que sigan con nuestra serie internacional, los invitamos a que estén pendientes de nuestro programa la próxima semana. Muchas gracias y una feliz noche.